Good evening. I'm Kathy Johnson, Professor and Chair of the Political Science Department. On behalf of the President's Office and the W. Ford Schuman Class of 50 Program in Democratic Studies, I'd like to thank you for coming. I'd also like to thank visiting lecturer Bernard Moore and Program Coordinator Carrie Green for making this event possible. Carrie has spent countless hours working behind the scenes, handling the logistics of this historic event, and without her work, it certainly wouldn't have happened. If you could take a moment, please check your cell phones, pagers, beepers, watch alarms. You can talk to your mother later and turn them off. Thank you. A vibrant democracy requires that positions are open to all, and on January 20th, we will look forward to the inauguration of the first African-American president, Barack Obama. But a vibrant democracy also requires that all citizens are represented, whether rich or poor, white or black, old or young. Formed in 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus strives to ensure that the U.S. House of Representatives is, in fact, the people's house. Its original members joined together to represent not just their own constituents, but millions of African Americans and other disadvantaged citizens. Often referred to as the conscience of Congress, the Congressional Black Caucus has advanced more equitable educational and healthcare policies, initiatives to reduce unemployment and increase wages, proposals to eliminate racial disparities in the criminal justice system, and a foreign policy agenda that gives due weight to human rights. Tonight, we are honored to have as our guests 9 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. They are Congressman James Clyburn, South Carolina's 6th District, House Majority Whip, Congressman Benny Thompson, Mississippi's 2nd District, Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. Congressman Danny Davis, Illinois' 7th District. Secretary of the Congressional Black Caucus, and the chairman of the District of Columbia Subcommittee of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Texas's 18th District. Chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure Protection of the Committee on Homeland Security. Congressman John Lewis. Georgia's 5th District, Chairman of the Subcommittee on Oversight of the Ways and Means Committee. Congresswoman Diane Watson, California's California's 33rd District, member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Congresswoman Donna Christensen, delegate from Virgin Islands. Chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Insular Affairs of the Committee on Natural Resources. Congressman Hank Johnson, Georgia's Georgia's 4th District, member of the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on the Judiciary. And Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, New York. New York's 11th District, member of the Committee on Education and Labor, the Homeland Security Committee, and the Committee on Small Business. The discussion tonight will be moderated by 60 Minutes news correspondent Leslie Stahl. Before joining 60 Minutes, Ms. Stahl was a CBS News White House correspondent and a moderator of Face the Nation. Her many awards included several Emmys for interviews and reporting, only one Lifetime Achievement Emmy in 2003, and an Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. After the panel discussion, the members will take questions from the audience, as is a time-honored academic tradition. We've reserved the first question from the audience for our honored guest, Governor Deval Patrick of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. For second and subsequent questions, please give priority to students. There's a mic in the center aisle here. If you have a question, please go to the mic, ask a question, one question, and don't make a speech. After the event, we invite you all to join us at a reception at Presky Student Center honoring the members of the Black Caucus and Leslie Stahl. Please join me in welcoming the members of the Congressional Black Caucus and Leslie Stahl.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to get right to it. The plan is to spend the beginning a little bit on the past, and then we'll turn to the future, the first 100 days of the next presidency, and then we'll have questions from the audience. First, I'd like to call on the members of the Black Caucus for a show of hands. How many, about a year ago, were saying that you didn't think that the United States, at least in this election, was ready to elect a black man to become president of the United States 1 year ago? Just 2 of you, really? I bet if I asked the audience, it would have been many more than that. How many of you on election night, after the networks finally called the election, how many of you cried? I'll bet everybody here cried too. Here's a quote from my friend Ken, who lives in Harlem. On election night, he was outside, and he told me that never in his entire life did he see so many black people so totally, completely, deeply happy. So I would like to ask the first question of Congressman James Clyburn. And my first question really is just for your feelings and thoughts, analysis, emotion, anything you want to tell us briefly about what went through your mind when Barack Obama was elected President of the United States.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much, Ms. Stahl, Governor Patrick, Mr. President, Madam First Lady. It's a real pleasure for me to be here on this campus. On Tuesday night, right around 11 o'clock, when I was sure that we were electing the first African-American president, I turned around, I looked at the monitor, and I looked first in the face of my daughter, my eldest, and tears were streaming down her face. I lost it at that moment, and I think I was shedding tears of vindication. Vindication for all those who kept faith in the American system. And I saw in my children's and grandchildren's faces tears of hope, a hope for a future that they really never thought would come to be. As many times as I told them that they could grow up to be whatever they wanted to be, quite frankly, they didn't believe it, and I didn't believe it when I was telling them. But the reason I did not raise my hand to your first question is because I really thought 8 years ago that the country was ready to elect an African-American president. I really felt that. I thought that it would be Colin Powell. I thought we were ready for Colin Powell. He's African-American. So I do believe that Tuesday, the 4th of November, was vindication.
Okay. I want to quote something that Barack Obama said. He was quoted in the New York Times Sunday magazine yesterday. And back in December '06, his wife Michelle turned to him and said, according to the magazine article, that if you're going to run, you have to know what you intend to accomplish. And apparently he had to think about it for a minute. And then he said, I know this. When I raise my hand and take the oath of office, I think the world will look at us differently, and millions of kids across the country will look at themselves differently. So let me turn to Congressman Benny Thompson and ask him what his thoughts were and what his analysis is. What does this mean?
I was very happy. Happy because I live in Mississippi, and I've lived there all my life, and I've seen a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. I came out early for Senator Obama because I was convinced it could happen. But when I went around the country, seeing a lot of young kids like those who are here in the audience, taking off time from school, working, sleeping on benches and things in churches, volunteering. It was exciting. So I'm very excited about it, to be honest with you. They're passionate because my state's history has not been very kind to people of color. And so his election that night, while I didn't cry, I saw hundreds of people in my little hometown celebrating. It wasn't quite Harlem, but we had just as much fun.
I'm going to turn to Congresswoman Diane Watson and ask her to tell us what she felt and what she thinks it means and for her overall analysis of the election.
We had a headquarters in my district. Our Speaker Pro Tem and one of the candidates and a labor group and so on. So we were busy looking at the results and all. I didn't want to claim victory because I didn't want the feeling of disappointment. And so around about 10, we're on the West Coast, when they announced it looked as if Barack Obama had it. There were still several states that had not come in yet. We pinched, we screamed, we were on our way out to Century Plaza where they had to close off the streets. They had about 30,000 people out there. And we screamed, we hollered, and we said, now let's get ourselves ready to meet the crowd. And so wipe your tears. We had every emotion. My emotion came about because I did not believe there were areas in the country that were ready to vote for a black man. And so it took me hours to really let it soak in that he had won. And I think this attests to what a true democracy is and that we can reach the tenets of democracy.
I want to quote something along those lines. Leon Wieseltier wrote in the New Republic, "There could be no more definitive demonstration of the American system of possibility than this. Pessimism was retired."
Yes.
Is that wonderful? Let me call on Danny Davis to tell us his thoughts.
You know, I thought that
notwithstanding all of the history of our country, all of its problems, all of the travail, all of the discrepancies that continue to exist, all of the needs that we know have not been met and fulfilled, that notwithstanding all of that, look at how far we had come from the time when men sat in a room and said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal. African Americans were counted as 3/5 of a person. Women were not in the picture. And yet here we are, 2008, where we could have elected a woman for the first time, and we did elect an African American male for the first time. I said, my country, 'tis of thee.
John Lewis. John McCain wrote about you that you are a great American hero. And I did see you cry on election night. I saw you on television. And I was crying with you.
Don't make me cry.
What?
Don't make me cry again.
Okay, I won't make you cry. But I want you to know I was crying with you. And I think a lot of people around the country were crying with you. You were crying for yourself and you were crying for your country. Let me ask you this. Did you see the Obamas on 60 Minutes last night?
Well, I saw a little part.
Part of it?
A little part, but it was taped, and I will see it later.
Okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I wondered what your thoughts are, and also if you had some observations about the Obamas as a couple coming into the White House and representing the American people, that family of theirs.
Well, I must tell you, to see this young leader, beautiful family, lovely wife, 2 beautiful young daughters, is going to send the strongest possible message, not just to Americans, but to people around the world, that America is on its way to the creation of a more perfect union, that we want to lay down the burden of race and create not just a most just society, but what Dr. King called the beloved community. And if we can do it in America, maybe it can serve as a model for the rest of the world. That night, I must tell you, I did cry. I think I had what I call an out-of-body experience. I jumped. I shouted for joy. I didn't think my feet were ever going to touch the ground again.
But do you think that the world in that moment sees us differently?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. You can see by way of television people around the world shouting with us. It created a sense of happiness and a sense of hope for the world community all over the world. Not just young people, not just children, but some people not so young, like many of us, were shouting. They want to believe in America again. And with Barack Obama in the White House, there will be a greater sense of hope, a greater sense of optimism that America is really America again.
What struck me about the interview last night, I know you all saw it, was how comfortable the Obamas were in their own skin, both of them, and how deliciously easy and fun they were with each other. Congresswoman Christensen, tell us what your thoughts were about election night and how you see this great family being the representative of all American families.
Well, I was one of those that didn't cry that night.
Now,
but
why didn't you cry?
I was really excited, and we were with a crowd of people.
You're too
We were
happy.
just jumping up and down and just screaming. We had a lot of people there, and we were just so excited. But when tears did come to my eyes is about a week later, and we were singing the Black National Anthem. And you sing about coming through a path that with tears have been watered, and through the path with blood of the slaughtered, and reaching the place for which your father sighed. And those words really, that song has always been important to me, but it really moved me when I sang it after the election. I think that seeing the Obamas in the White House, and I know that Michelle is going to be a great First Lady. It is just, I think it's going to have a transformative impact on how people around this country see the African American. And I think that's going to be very important, and it's going to make a big difference in achieving a lot for African Americans. And I agree. I think one of the most significant things that happened is that people have given up. I do healthcare. We go around the country and talk to people about, health and how we need to eliminate health disparities. And people have sort of sat back and figured that nothing is ever going to change. They're not ever really going to achieve full wellness. But this yes, we can spirit has taken hold now, and I think you're going to see people feeling their own power and using their own power, and it's going to mean change.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, what are your observations?
Well, I did see the 60 Minutes, and I was on the verge of crying then, and I might be tonight. Let me first of all quickly thank the president of Williams College, and I must mention Bernard. And to reflect on what I can see of the diversity in your faculty. I know it will continue to grow, and student body. And quickly, I must mention the last breath of fresh air in the Department of Justice, your governor, Deval Patrick, who was a great American. Leslie, for me, W. Du Bois in the 20th century said that the issue of the 20th century was the color line. And I think both the election and the night on the 4th was, and I was not there for the emancipation, but being on a campus, I better say that. I was not there for the Emancipation Proclamation. But I think it was like the Emancipation, like your birthday, and like the mountaintop speech of Martin Luther King. And that, of course, John Lewis recounts the history so well for us, but that speech more than the I Have a Dream, because it was looking into the future and telling us that there would be a promised land. In our gospel tradition, we sing songs that have certain words, and one says we simply have to tremble. And on that night, I think there were many of us who were simply trembling. And we were light-footed. We might not have gotten off the ground, but we were light-footed. We had butterflies in our stomach. We were unbelieving, to be very honest with you. And there was a burden that was lifted off of our shoulders. We felt that the world was ours. What a day of opportunity. The Texans who worked so hard to claim Texas for Senator Barack Obama did not quite make it. But we put ourselves on the map. We voted more democratically than we ever did. And let me just say that my fear was based upon the experience that I had in Florida in 2000 and listening to a voice come over the PA system that said that the voting count must stop. That was then Secretary of State Harris, and that it's over. And I trembled because I kept seeing the possibility of something going awry. I couldn't get a grip that it was real. And lo and behold, when they finally, as Michelle said last night, ran across the screen, President-elect Barack Obama, I thought of trembling. I thought of all the babies that are now going to be named Barack. And I thought of a glorious opportunity for
I-
America and the world.
How many of those babies do you think are going to be white?
Pardon?
How many of those babies do you think will be white?
A whole bunch. This is a new day in America.
Okay. Congressman Yvette Clarke, how wide a river do you think we've crossed? Someone mentioned the burden of race. Is it over? Is it behind us now?
I don't think it's behind us now. I think it's right in front of us now. I think that Senator Obama has done something for every American, and that's brought something to the forefront in conversation and dialogue that many people never ever wanted to confront or have ever even pondered or considered. Everyone sort of had their own take on the race question in America, and when we would have the first black president, you know, I didn't raise my hand either when you raised the question, because I had the faith and hope that Barack Obama had. And so I refused to believe that he would not win. And when I thought about it, I said, well, if Barack Obama doesn't win, it will be a barometer for all Americans about where we are in race in the 21st century, because there is no reason why this man should not win. All of the indicators in terms of what he had done in building a grassroots movement and campaign, all that he had done in terms of answering every question along the road about his integrity and everything else, and everything that the Republicans did with their campaign. I just figured, if he doesn't win, there's an X factor involved here. And we will know where we stand in the 21st century when we evaluate leadership. Will the X factor be the factor? And America has said that that is no longer the factor for the presidency of the United States. Now it's front and center.
Okay. Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia, what are your thoughts? What were your feelings that night? And what's your analysis of where we are?
Yeah, my thoughts were many and varied. I did not get overexcited. In fact, I think that the biggest thing that I took away from that evening was listening to some commentary after President-elect Obama spoke to the nation in Chicago. And one of the commentators said something to the effect that they were prepared to have fireworks going off. And the candidate, the now president-elect, told them, let's cancel that. And I think that he was probably thinking in terms of the difficulties that lie ahead. And I certainly was thinking about all of the jobless people who were jubilant for a minute, and all of those who had lost their homes to foreclosure. Thought about them and how happy they must have been for the moment, but when it all was said and done, we still have some very significant, profound issues that need to be addressed at a time when our economy is very weak. And so my spirit was, as a congressman, is that, you know, this is my first term. I really like this job, and I feel privileged to be here at this time, and I look forward to using that opportunity to help bring about the kind of change that Senator Obama talked about on the campaign trail. So my spirit was, it's time to go to work and make some tough decisions.
Excellent.
To benefit the people.
Well, that Excellent. So that guides us right into the future. And let me start again with Congressman Clyburn, Majority Whip. How has the election of Barack Obama changed the agenda for the Black Caucus? What are your top priorities now, and are they different because he's president?
I don't think they're any different. I do not believe, if you were to look at the overall agenda for the Congressional Black Caucus, it's always been about eliminating disparities, closing gaps. I mean, that's been it. I mean, we would come from year to year with a new set of priorities in a given year. So this year, that will still be there as our overall agenda. The priorities have got to be jobs, jobs, jobs. People are unemployed, and we must get people back to work. And that's why I believe that the circumstances dictate that if we don't do it this week in the lame duck, then the first priority is going to be an economic recovery package in January that we will have to use to get people back to work and to get our infrastructure back in place. And then I believe we will look at things like SCHIP, that's the state Children's Health Insurance Program. That program has to be a priority because it expires in March. We only extended it for about 6 months. So that's got to be a priority. We passed a $90 billion CHAMPS program that we've passed twice, and it was vetoed twice. And so I don't think that you'll see any big change in the agenda. There will be a reordering of priorities because of the situation we find ourselves in with the destabilization that's taking place in our financial markets and the unemployment problems that we have in our communities throughout the country.
Well, jobs, jobs, jobs is Mr. Obama's first priority as well, I assume. But many have written that one of Mr. Obama's biggest challenges will be resisting you, because the image is that you're all way to the left, and that he has said that his overriding promise is to be bipartisan, to have consensus governing. So I want to know what pressures you all feel. Look, you're all smiling already. What pressures you feel to moderate your liberal instincts in order to help him govern from the center where he apparently wants to. Who wants to take that question? Okay, go for it. Hank Johnson.
Yeah, I think that it may be difficult for some to dream, some of us in Congress to dream that the folks on the other side would wake up and one day want to work with us to solve these problems. But I just have an abundant hope in everyone's humanity. And I look forward to us being able to reach out to Republicans, independents, and discuss the issues and come up with a resolution which we can all live with, as opposed to just gridlock. That's what the American people do not want. They want change from that. And so I think that now is the time for all good men and women to come to the aid of their country in that way.
Okay, I'm going to call on Congressman Davis. What about moderating the liberal instinct?
Well, listen, I don't see anything left about wanting to put people to work. I don't see anything left about wanting to feed people who are hungry or provide energy for people who are cold. It gets cold in the wintertime. And so I think that the agenda of the Congressional Black Caucus really is an agenda for America. It is an agenda that says, let's help America to become the America that has never been. but the America that we know can be. And that's the kind of hope that I think Barack Obama has been talking about throughout his campaign. So we don't intend to get bogged down with labels and characterizations of who we are. Yes, I'm an African American, but I represent thousands of non-African Americans. I represent downtown Chicago. I mean, downtown Chicago. and our agenda is an American agenda. It's not a one-sided, it's an American agenda.
John Lewis?
I might add, some of us been around a long time, and we know how to pace ourselves. We really do. And no one ever told us that the struggle to bring about change would take just one day, or one presidential election, or a few years, but it is a long, ongoing struggle. We have limited resources. Our country is in bad shape. We have to pull together. I don't think we're going to be doing anything radical. We're not going to be extremists. One of the things that I would love to see us do is to bring the war in Iraq to an end, bring it to an end. And I think Barack Obama will help lead us down that road to end this unnecessary involvement in Iraq and use some of those resources to take care of our people. Our people are hurting, and we want to work with him, and we will work with him.
I want to quote one of you. Let's see if he recognizes himself. This is one of you, quoted in the New York Times with quote marks, speaking about Barack Obama. He knows he has to be careful not to make any lurches left or right. He has to play the game inside the hash marks. Anything too far left or too far right would make it a very rocky presidency for him, Mr. Clyburn said. Most people understand that. Not all people, and I've heard some people disagree with that, but most people feel that way. And let me throw out one possibility. What happens when, and I'm not saying he will, but what happens if Barack Obama says, look, we're in a recession, and I know I said I was going to tax the wealthy, but it's not a good time to do it. Do you all say, okay, he's right? Or I'm going to help him out? He's going to have my help, Congresswoman?
Well, let me just say that we're very proud of President-elect Barack Obama. There's no doubt that the world has a new opportunity. But I'm also proud to be a progressive. I'm proud to have progressive ideas. And I think one of the uniqueness of this relationship will be, as my colleagues have said, it will highlight the Congressional Black Caucus for the richness of our diversity. Chairpersons of major committees, Homeland Security, Ways and Means, Judiciary. That means that we deal with the everyday needs of Americans. But we also get to take care of the dirty fingernails. And the dirty fingernails will have to be taken care of. And this little book that I have here is the Constitution. My predecessor, one of my predecessors, Barbara Jordan, used to always carry it around. And the idea is that this talks about checks and balances. And I have to ask the American public, of course we have to be reasonable, to allow us to do our job as well, which is the checks and balances means that there may be a voice raised, not in ugliness, but in perspective of representation. We think it's important to tax those who are making over this amount. Whether the president accepts that, we can have a vigorous debate. But the other thing is, I think that an astute and thoughtful president-elect to be president like Barack Obama, who's not intimidated, as I can see, by anyone, will welcome the idea that there's a group, in addition to being just like every American on jobs and health care and education and science, is going to be dealing with the dirty fingernails of Gina 6, of HIV/AIDS, of human rights, of the criminal justice system. Those are the kinds of things that are not popular to take up. And when I say that, fixing the upside downness of America, I think people are going to still look at the Congressional Black Caucus and call us to question of our values. And I hope that we'll be standing tall, and I believe we will, working with President Barack Obama, but also standing on our values and cleaning up the dirty fingernails of America.
And let me just say that most successful presidents govern from the center. They might come in at one end or the other, but they move towards the center because that's where the American people are. I don't see anything that is excessive in providing health care, SCHIP, for our children. And I don't think anything about providing education and having federal funds flow out to our states. I represent California. It is the largest state in the union, 38 million people, and 2,000 people entering the state every day, coming from over the border, coming from Southeast Asia, requiring that my school district, LAUSD, speaks 129 languages. That's costly. And I don't see anything wrong and excessive with putting our money into learning so that our young people can face this global economy with some sense of being able to compute, being able to write, and being able to understand the issues of the world. I think that's progressive, and I think that brings us together with the rest of the world. And I see a new opportunity with Barack Obama.
I want to go back to something that Congresswoman Jackson Lee brought up, and that's checks and balances. Because during the Bush years, the executive branch expanded its powers greatly at the expense of Congress in terms of domestic surveillance, something called torture, preemptive wars, and on and on. So I'd like to ask Benny Thompson, as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, how you see Congress reasserting its authority and oversight rule in light of the fact that now you're going to be dealing with a friendly administration.
Well, first of all, we are a nation of laws, and we ought to follow the law. And the law is not one individual. George Bush assumed that he was the law, and that's not how it should be. We should reflect and support the FISA laws. Our government should not spy on our citizens just because they want to. All those things are fundamental to the Constitution. And so what we have to do is make sure that we live by that document. The checks and balances system supports that. But you know, the key to it all, I'm excited about President Obama, but I don't want people to figure that there won't be some times when members of the Congressional Black Caucus might differ with some of the things he's doing. We can differ without falling out and not speaking to each other. I mean, you know, so I think you have to understand that we all represent areas. I'm an avid sportsman. I hunt every chance I get. Now, my other colleagues from the cities might have a problem with that, but, you know, I will put my voting record up against a lot of those other folk who say differently. But we have to respect those differences. And I think what we represent as a caucus is a conscience of this country that so many people wish they could say. We have some of our colleagues who are not African American who tell us all the time, I wish I could say those things like you do about what we need to do for people. And so that's why we formed this caucus, to become the conscience of our Congress, so those things could be said, because so many of the people we care the most about, they can't hire lobbyists, they can't fly to Washington, they don't have fax machines, So, our job is a little broader, and because of that, it's more difficult. But to be honest with you, I chair an agency that is dealing with intelligence, but my government spied on me when I was in college. And so, isn't it amazing that now a government that spied on somebody, the guy who runs the committee, is now the chairman? So,
it's a great country. You have to admit it's a great country.
Yeah.
There's been a lot written about Barack Obama wanting to emulate, in some ways, Abraham Lincoln. And one of the ways we hear is that he wants to, in some ways, have a cabinet that's a team of rivals. And as we all know, Hillary Clinton's name has been floated as a possible Secretary of State. Anybody care to comment on that? Whether they think that's a good idea? Congressman?
It's a good idea to have all of these competing forces involved inside this government. I've read Team of Rivals twice. Interesting enough, the first time I read it was in preparation of becoming Majority Whip. Because our caucus is so diverse, there are 8 distinct caucuses within it, and I read that book, but I think that what we have to really look at is that there were some very touchy times between Lincoln and Seward, and the extent to which this president, if this were to be the case, can manage those differences. It's all about managing. I think that the problem we get in government is that when you have all these yes people around you, people who just are afraid to disagree with you. I think he demonstrated with his very first decision as a nominee, when he selected Joe Biden to go on the ticket with him, he demonstrated right then that he did not mind having people around him who would articulate a different viewpoint. And so I think it would be great to have a Hillary Clinton or anybody else that may bring a different perspective. Because the reason we're in trouble right now is because this administration has got a bunch of folks who will not be individuals on anything. We have so many people that tell us. You look at S-chip. We got 271 votes to override the veto. 271 people. We didn't have but 236 Democrats, but we didn't get to 290 because they got phone calls and they backed away. They were not strong enough to be individuals. And so I would hope he bring a lot of individuals into this government to sit down around the table, have some differences of opinions, and then go forward and run this country.
Well, I've seen some commentary that says that there's still some resentment about the campaign that Hillary Clinton ran. And I'm wondering if any of you have any particular problem with Barack Obama selecting Hillary Clinton, given some of the things that were said in the campaign.
Well, I think just follow Jim, if I could, because he also reminds me of John Kennedy in terms of remembering that Kennedy once said when they talked about negotiating that he would never negotiate out of fear, but he would never fear to negotiate. And I also take the position that if two people agree all of the time, then one of them are unnecessary. And so I don't think Barack Obama is afraid to test theories and practices and go where others might be fearful of going. So I wouldn't be surprised one single bit if he decided that Senator Clinton should be the next Secretary of State?
I just want to say this. I supported Senator Clinton in the primary, and I explained to my constituents why I was supporting her, because I felt she could put the building blocks down across which Barack Obama could go to become president. And I think putting her at his side gives him a brilliant woman, satisfies the need of people within my district, that West Side community, who really started the feminist movement back in the 70s, and they said all of their life they would prioritize and would focus on getting a woman as president. And so I think all of these women who just lived to see one of their own in that position would feel, finally, she's been recognized. I also think she brings a brilliance to it. She brings the context, she brings the experience to that position. She's well known globally. And I think a person who was the editor of the Harvard Law Review would realize that and really do himself some good putting her at his side.
Do you? Go ahead, Congressman Clark.
I just wanted to address that as well, because I think it also sends a signal to the nation. If we're talking about how we want to heal rifts, how we want to extend ourselves across the aisle, if we maintain a posture that we can't do that within our own party, then what is it that we're really saying? I think that the fact that Barack Obama has reached out to people who have differed with him, notwithstanding, how people felt at the end of the day, begins a healing process. Whether they ultimately come together, I think that it sends a marvelous signal to the nation about how we can get past these things without holding resentment and going for the better good.
That seems to be one of his major messages.
I think that process of healing also began after the primary season, when Hillary and Bill embraced Barack Obama's campaign and went out and campaigned avidly for him. So the primary issues, some of which are real and some of which probably were not, are a thing of the past, and I think they have put it behind them, and the rest of us should too.
Let me ask. Okay, go for it.
Women have to get on the record here.
Absolutely.
I came in 1995 with the Newt Gingrich Revolution. There were only 13 Democrats elected in the United States Congress that year. A lonely experience. But what I will say is that even though it was not the White House, there was a tendency, as my colleagues have said, to listen to their own voice. They heard nothing else. It was the famous phrase of their way or the highway. Isn't it refreshing to have a president so self-confident that he is able to spread his wings and to allow a diversity of intellect? Hillary Clinton, during the election, those of us who worked with her said that it was a feisty campaign because it was a lot to be going after, the presidency of the United States. But I do believe in a partisan voice, the only one I'll have tonight. It gives credit to the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party has always been known, sometimes to our demise, as the big tent. Everybody is welcomed under this tent, and we do a lot of battling with each other. We have a diversity of opinions. Wait till we get on immigration reform. So the very fact that the senator is in contention, Senator Clinton is in contention, being considered, is a reflection that genius is not offended by genius. And you can be assured that working together, again, my final words, great for America, but great for the world.
Let me ask John Lewis a question about how the caucus views the new the president-elect, will view him when he's in the White House. Will you see him as part of your caucus or even the leader of your caucus, or will you see him and deal with him as the executive, the president, just the next president of the United States?
Well, I don't think we're going to be walking up to him and saying, "Brother President." No. But, maybe some of us may have a design to say, "Brother President." But we will respect him as Mr. President, and we will respect the office. He is our president. Not the Black Caucus president.
Right.
He is the president of America, and we will give him all due respect. We will not treat him just a former member of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Or leader.
And I think my colleagues will agree with me.
But leader of your caucus.
No,
he's
not a
in
leader.
The executive branch.
No,
now.
he's not a leader of the Black Caucus. He may be the leader. He's an American leader. He's the leader of all Americans. It doesn't matter whether we're Democrats or Republicans, whether we're black or white or Latino or Asian American or Native American. He is the president.
Good answer. Before Congressman Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's incorrect to assume that all black folks think the same way and have the same views. That being the case, I'll say that in the Black Caucus, when we come together and eat fried chicken on Wednesday afternoon at 12 noon, a date that is indelibly etched in my mind, peach cobbler. But as we come together and break bread weekly, we have vigorous discourse amongst ourselves, and
you argue a lot?
No, I won't call it argue, but we have spirited discussions, and I have not seen a episode where everybody was agreement. All 43 members have been in agreement on any particular issue, but it's a great organization for keeping us aware of our history and the challenges that we as people face. And it's an opportunity for us to strengthen each other as we move in our respective domains, often solo, often by ourselves, and we come back together and break bread and share stories and talk about policy, disagree, agree, and we move forward. And I think that the Congressional Black Caucus will continue to serve as the conscience of Congress. When you have people like John Lewis and Jim Clyburn who speak with such moral clarity and authority, it makes us all aspire to be of the same caliber. So, but yeah, we don't always think the same, and I don't think that there'll be some supporting some policies that Barack has and others don't support it, and then we'll reverse the next day just for the heck of it.
Congresswoman?
Just for the record, I want to point out that the Congressional Black Caucus has sought to work with every president, and to the extent that we have tried with the current president, the outgoing president, it has not been successful. So we have always reached out to the White House and tried to, and presented our agenda and tried to seek a collaborative role with the president. Of course, the incoming president is a member of the Black Caucus, and so we have worked collaboratively with him before, and we anticipate that the same thing will pertain. And no, we won't always agree. As you've heard, there's some very avidly progressive people in this caucus, but I think that's going to also help the president's agenda, because we may be a little further out in front on a particular issue, maybe just where he wants to go, but we'll help by being that more progressive. I think we'll help him to achieve the agenda that he set out.
Okay, well, I think it may be about time to turn to the audience and invite them to join us in the Q&A. I frankly have been honored to be up here and I'm inspired. But it is your turn, and I would ask the Governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, if he would please ask the first audience question. Make it tough.
So, I first want to just thank everybody for being here. This is so exciting and so much fun. And I wanted to ask a question about race, but with a very brief preamble, if you will, because we've been talking about the election. I actually did not see the election as about race. I think race was a feature. I thought what the election was really about was a whole lot of people like those in this room and all around the country waking up to the fact that we had all along all the power we needed to make all the change we want. And I thought that's what Barack Obama brought as a unique kind of leadership. He reminded us that we had that power. And how marvelous that it would come from a leader with those capabilities who is also African American. Now, having said that, I wonder if you think there is unfinished legislative business around race, and how it's going to come up in the next Congress.
I would certainly say that there is. As a matter of fact, Mr. Governor, you speak like a person who may have spent some time in Chicago. But it's certainly a pleasure to be here. I think that there are issues that relate directly and disproportionately to what America has been. For example, we are the most imprisoned nation on the face of the earth, and a disproportionate number of those individuals who are incarcerated, a seriously disproportionate number of those individuals are African American males. And so if we do something about that issue, we're not just dealing with race, we're dealing with a social issue that has been allowed to fester like a sore, and we've got to do something to stop it from running, as Langston Hughes would have said. And so, yes, I think we must deal with unfinished legislative challenges that have been brought on as a result, to some degree, of the racial disparities that have existed in our country.
I'd like to broaden it out. You're going to see race rear its ugly head when we go into session next year and we start talking about immigration and immigrants. It used to be a black-white issue. Now it's a white-brown, black-brown issue. And we have another group that has come into California. That's the Asians. And you're going to see us grappling with how we deal with the illegal immigrants. And there are people in California who believe in English only, and they don't want any other language spoken in our schools. So race has been an issue in this country, but as has been said at this table, we're going to confront it, we're going to deal with it, and we're going to negotiate it to a point where it won't matter. And so I think the opportunity is there. I think Barack Obama leads and opens up that opportunity because he certainly confronted it dealt with it, and I really feel that people started putting his race aside and looked at him as a leader.
Congresswoman?
Thank you, Diane. Well, health care. The infant mortality in blacks is still more than twice that of their white counterparts, 10 times more African American males with AIDS than white Americans, more amputations, more hospitalizations for asthma in the black community, African Americans dying from prematurely from preventable causes every day in this country. And so that is unfinished business, closing the health disparity gap. And it also relates to the social determinants of health, because we can't change that unless we change some of the environmental circumstances in which people live that foster this bad health or impede wellness. So that is an unfinished piece of legislation. The Caucus, the Black, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific Caucus, have introduced this in three different Congresses. We'll be introducing it again, and we know that our president has introduced similar legislation, president-elect, in the Senate, and so we look forward to working with him on that issue.
Okay, is there anybody? Let's have some students come up. Great.
Sheila.
Well, first, as two Williams students, we'd like to thank and welcome Ms. Stahl, all the caucus members, and Governor Patrick. We're so thankful that you could come only not 2 weeks after this election has concluded, and our question is about the broader context of our presidential electoral system.
Many of the caucus members present today were members of Congress 8 years ago, standing at the well of the House and requesting that a member of the Senate assist in your efforts to stop the counting of electoral votes. None came to your aid despite your request.
In 2000, the electoral winner lost the national popular vote. And this year, the candidate who won the popular vote 53% to 46% won the Electoral College 68% to 32%, which is 5 times the gap.
Our question is this: do all of the members present endorse our current electoral system? And if not, will any of you promise to introduce a constitutional amendment next year to repeal the Electoral College?
Congresswoman? Yes. Next question. Go ahead.
Well,
I do endorse the Electoral College. However, I have introduced legislation before, and we'll introduce again, that we adopt for the nation an Electoral College system based upon that which is used in Nebraska and Maine, and that is to put every state in play by awarding electoral votes based upon congressional districts outcomes as well as the statewide, which means in a state where there are 10 congressional districts, then they will have 12 electoral votes. Whoever carries the state will get the 2 for the senators, and then you count whoever carries each congressional district for the electoral votes. I think that would be a way to keep balance in the system and do it in such a way that it would bring fairness and will always keep states in play. The problem we have now is that so often, like in Mississippi and South Carolina, where a candidate, Barack Obama, could carry a couple of congressional districts, he never bothered to come because he knew the other 2 or 3 districts would outvote him, and so therefore they don't come. Either you get ignored or nobody pays attention to you, and I think if we were to do it by congressional districts, it will achieve the purpose you're trying to get to. I've done that before, and I will do it again.
Okay, let's have the next question.
First of all, I would like to thank you for sharing this historical moment with us. My question is about the most important that grabbed my attention from President Obama's speech after the election was he said, maybe 1 year won't be enough, even maybe 1 term won't be enough for us to bring the change. And the next day I was talking to my friends between classes and he said, where is the change? My room still is untidy. Still I have readings that are unfinished. And where is the change? It's kind of like he was joking and we laughed. And then, but I realized, people are not going to drop guns in Iraq after a year. And I was reading that the New York Times projected that this recession, we are not done with recession, is going to go till the end of 2009, and the unemployment rate will go above, and we'll go back to the 1990s where we had high employment rates. And so I'm just going to quote from my newspaper from my hometown, Istanbul. They were saying that we trust American people, we respect American people more that they elected Barack Obama, but now we are kind of curious what's going to happen if American people don't see that substantial change in their individual lives, and what's going to happen, are they just going to blame in black administration? And my question is, the question is how Barack Obama and his administration will deal with the challenge that change is constant, but also slow, and in times like this, it's very slow.
Good question about the patience of the American people in times like these. John Lewis.
As a nation and as a people, we have been very patient. But we also learned never, ever to give up or to give in. I think this campaign was a campaign of faith, hope, and determination, saying, yes, we can. And yes, we did it. So people told us when we were marching from Selma to Montgomery in 1965 that we would never make it, that we wouldn't get a Voting Rights Act. We made it from Selma to Montgomery, and we got a Voting Rights Act passed, and the President of the United States signed it into law. So that's part of the whole American dream, that you don't give up, you don't get weary, you hang in there. That the struggle is not a struggle that lasts for one day or 1 week or 1 4-year term. It's an ongoing struggle. It's more than a lifetime, but you do what you can and continue to do it.
Hi, I really am so glad to see all 9 of you tonight. It's really inspiring me to, I was just helping with Barack in this election, and my question was, for young kids like us, how, with a black president being elected, how, in a positive way, is education gonna change?
Great question. That's a great question.
As an educator, in my other life, I think we have an opportunity now to open the door. You know, education is the only compulsory program in America, and every child between the age of 6 and 16 must be in some kind of educational program. I think you're going to see under Barack's leadership an opportunity to put a focus on the entitlement that you have and everyone in this room had to education. And I think we're going to see more money flow from the federal government out to the school districts. And every state has the obligation and the responsibility to have an educational program for all children, regardless of where they were born originally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So I guess I'd like to say that I'm a bit of a skeptic. With the election of President Obama, I guess a lot of people have been saying, and a lot of commentators and even friends have been saying, that we're entering a post-racial era, that race in America doesn't matter anymore. Yet despite all of this, we have economic injustice and most pressingly, a huge achievement gap between students and education. So what I want to know, and I guess we've talked about this before a little bit, but more specifically, what do you, as the Congressional Black Caucus, plan to do to not only reach out legislatively, but in the minds of Americans, prioritize these type of issues and ensure that America is moving into a more equal route?
I think we'll keep doing what we've been doing, but we'll have more help in the White House. And I think that's going to help a great deal. I think John was absolutely correct a moment ago. Struggle and change are both lifelong processes. They never stop. You never finish what you're doing. And so change is inevitable. But it's more evolutionary than it is revolutionary. And it keeps coming as we keep working to make it happen. And then when you evaluate and think of, if you evaluate on the basis of where we have come from and then get to where we are, I hasten to tell you that I used to pick cotton. C-O-T-T-O-N. I went to a one-room school where one teacher taught 8 grades, plus what we call the little primer and the big primer. But because of a belief and a hope, I can tell my grandchildren that these hands that I used to use to pick cotton, I used to help pick a president of the United States of America. And so you gotta have faith and believe me, it'll happen.
Want to follow that?
Young man. Yeah, sir. Let me quickly,
I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought that was...
Let me just sit up in my seat, and I will try to give you a bionic minute. President Barack Obama, President-elect, is an American president who happens to be black. And I think that the role of the Congressional Black Caucus will not alter from its roadmap of social change and social justice. I am a skeptic that is optimistic. It means that I can recognize that on the night of the president-elect's election, a hate crime occurred where a Muslim was beat up in the name of Barack Obama. A person from Ecuador was killed because of a hate crime. Affirmative action will still be relevant until the barons of American industry reflect the color of America: Hispanic, African American, Asian, women, and others. When Yale and Harvard and Williams College has presidents of color. When you have the tentacles of social change reaching down to the very lowest ebb, when affirmative action, as I said earlier, can spread to places beyond the Beltway. So I frankly believe that we can be skeptics, but we can be optimistic. And we can also hold America to a higher standard, because we have made a change at the top. And we can be fighters against hate crimes. We can be promoters of affirmative action, not in a discriminatory basis, but in an outreach basis. And we can tread in places as people of color where we have not been before, whether it's energy and healthcare and higher levels of education and higher levels of corporate America. I think that is what we will be able to do even as President Barack Obama serves this nation as the American president.
Next question.
Good evening. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and as a resident of a city where the majority of the citizens are African American or of other minority groups, I was curious about your opinions of D.C. statehood and or giving Eleanor Holmes Norton a vote.
Shouldn't Danny Davis take that one? The chairman of the District of Columbia Committee?
I'm sorry. I tell you, statehood for the District of Columbia is an idea whose time has passed. We are full square in favor of statehood for the District of Columbia. And Eleanor Holmes Norton, who represents that district, she will wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning talking about statehood. I believe that during the next 4 years, this may be the time when it will actually happen.
Thank you.
I've noticed that Condoleezza Rice, the current Secretary of State, has not been mentioned once in this conversation. She currently holds the office to which Senator Clinton aspires. And so my question is, what role does partisanship play in the current progress we are seeing across racial lines? And say the day that the Republicans regain the majority in Congress, or we have another Republican president, what would that mean in terms of the progress we expect under President-elect Obama?
I'll take that, Congressman Johnson.
I think the nation has changed direction with this election. It shows that actually the people have changed, the hearts and minds of the people. We don't think the same way that we used to think, and it's basically the young people that propelled this change to occur. And you all are going to be the ones to continue to fine-tune the changes that we'll make in terms of policy. And Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, before her there was Madeleine Albright. History of female secretaries of state, all of whom have done a good job. Secretary Rice is so steeped in the policies that need to change that I can't really get. I respect her as her intelligence, her intellect, and her knowledge of Soviet affairs and Eastern things. But we've changed. We're not talking about Africa, Asia, Latino nations, South Africa, even Arctic. The Arctic region deserves our attention. So I just look forward to us moving forward, and I'll always hold Condoleezza Rice in high esteem.
That answers your question. Next question.
Hello. We've talked tonight, obviously, a lot about the domestic economy and the struggles of people here, which are, of course, very real and very troubling. But it should be said that many people across the world would be more than happy to live the life of an American in this recession rather than the lives they currently have. So my question concerns foreign aid. Are any of you intend to bring up legislation to increase the levels of foreign aid to the developing world in general or to sub-Saharan Africa in particular? And if so, how would you make the case to Americans who want to see economic progress here and who see the economic problems here that it is necessary to give more foreign aid?
Go ahead.
We must help those around the world who don't have, and the way that we do that is not by giving them a shipment of soybeans or something. We need to help with investment in infrastructure and enable or we need to invest in making people feel happy and secure with their existence, as opposed to concerned because they see the wealth going into the hands of their leadership, who American policy is supporting.
But can I interrupt? I mean, in this time when we're having our own serious economic issues, is it realistic to be talking about foreign aid when we're having to talk about domestic aid?
But in spite of all of our difficulties, and we're really suffering as a nation, but we must not give up on the rest of the world. We must learn to live together. As Dr. King said, "Oh, your parish has food." And I don't think the people around the world are inspired by our bombs and our missiles and our guns. They're inspired by our ideas. We need to invest in Peace Corps and help provide the people of this world with some of the basic human needs. we can still share what we have.
Do we have the resources?
Yes.
Yeah, we have. We can stop some of the waste. I don't think the Pentagon need more missiles, more bombs, and more guns.
We don't live in isolation anymore. We are a world economy. And I believe that 9/11 had something to do with the way this country has been imperialistic around this globe. And I do think, and Colin Powell said this when he gave his endorsement to Barack Obama. He said, we're going to have to reach out and help the developing nations. And if we can spend $15 billion a month on a war that we cannot win because it was never declared and we don't know who the enemy is, we could take that money and we could help the developing nations progress. So I think yes. And if we can bail out our automobile industry so that people can keep their jobs, and I understand there are 3 million jobs at stake. If we can bail them out, these people can work and pay their taxes and fill in the coffers. If we let it sink and go into bankruptcy, then we're going to have that unemployment and we won't have that contribution. So yes, we're never too poor to help our brothers around this globe. And sisters.
You have struck a chord. Let me just be pointed about what weapons have done for us. There is turmoil and conflict in the Mideast. Pakistan and Afghanistan have now become a center of major conflict. There's really no peace around the world. We are in turmoil in South America, Venezuela and others. We're fighting not in terms of weapons, but we're in conflict with Cuba. What I would suggest to you is that when we look at the landscape of the world and we look at the starvation in places like Ethiopia, we look at the number of children who die every day out of hunger, can you imagine the goodwill that we now have with this newly elected president? You ask how we can convince the American people. The way you can convince the American people is, one, thank the United States military for their bravery, for those who went to war because they were sent, but to be able to tell the American people, we can bring your sons and daughters home, and instead we can hand out fishing rods, we can build schools, we can re-educate people to appreciate this little thing called a constitution or democracy, that it really works, that we are in fact a people of peace. All the goodwill and the bounty we will get for that will be absolutely amazing, and we'll have the $400 million a day, $15 billion back in our coffers to be able to distribute to make peace as opposed to war. I think they'll be convinced of that.
Good question. I'm afraid to say that this is going to be the very last question, so I am very sorry, but we're running very late. Please.
I'd like to direct this to Diane Watson. November 4th was very historic, clearly, but the panel has been discussing how they believe in the humanity of the American people. How then do we accept the crushing blow that was dealt to the gay rights movement?
I come from California. Proposition 8 was on the ballot, and Proposition 8 would be a constitutional amendment against gay marriage. As you know, it was a highly contentious battle and put on the ballot by a group of people who felt that their moral and religious beliefs were offended by the decisions of the Supreme Court some time ago. I believe in civil rights, but I don't think you can equate the battle of the 60s, battles for civil rights, with the battle for the rights of homosexuals to marry. That's one of the things that I think got confused in this election. But I believe that people who believe certain ways ought to keep trying to convince others that What they're proposing is fair and just. The battle goes on.
Congressman Johnson?
I think that we should recognize the humanity in every human being, regardless of sexual orientation. And one of the things that people like to do is kind of partner up. They like to get together and you know, kind of live as a family, regardless of whether or not you're gay or straight. Everybody likes to do. Everybody wants somebody, and and so when people want to get together and formalize their relationship so that they can inherit from each other, they can make medical decisions in case one is incapacitated, they can own a home together, they can do all of the things that families do or partners do. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that one of the changes that are called for here now for each of us as individuals is to, when there is injustice, regardless of whether or not it's perpetrated against black folks or whether or not it's perpetrated against white folks or Hispanics or Asians or anyone else, or gay people. I think we've got to call it out. I believe that it is a issue of civil rights. And
I'm going to call on John Lewis, and I'm also going to suggest, Congressman Lewis, that this may be the last thing this panel gets to say.
Well,
so I'm asking you to kind of answer the question, but then broaden it out, because we're wrapping it up.
Mr. President, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I've long taken the position that we're one nation, that we're one people, that we're one house, we're one family. The American family, the American house, and we must all learn to live together. I said from time to time, we've debated the Defense of Marriage Act on the floor of the House, that I fought too long and too hard against discrimination based on race, not to stand up and speak out against discrimination based on sexual orientation. A few short years ago, in the American South, in a state like Virginia, until not that many years ago, in Mississippi, in Alabama, and Jim Clyburn would tell you in almost all of the South, Texas, black and white could not marry. Dr. King would say that races do not fall in love and get married. Not races, but individuals fall in love and get married. It's nobody's business. It's not the government's business, whether it's federal or state, to tell someone who they can fall in love with and get married. Two people want to fall in love and get married, it's their business.
Thank you very much.
I would like to say that it has been a privilege to be in the room. I think I speak for everybody here. It has been historic. We all thank you so much for coming and being candid and honest and for being inspiring and in many times ringing wonderful words that we all need to hear. The Black Caucus is incredibly powerful now. I don't think most Americans know how many in the Black Caucus are chairman of our major committees in the House. You have a lot on your shoulders. You have a lot of responsibilities coming up. We want to thank you for coming and for sharing with us. And I want to thank all of you for coming tonight, too. Thank you.